Welcome to the Browns Roofing Residential Training Series. This is Residential Roofing 101, the foundation for everything you'll do on the residential side. Before you can sell a roof, inspect a roof, or explain a roof, you have to be able to read one, what it's built from, how the pieces fit together, and what every part is called. That's this module. By the end, you'll be able to stand in a driveway, look up, and describe exactly what you're seeing in the same language a builder, an adjuster, or an inspector would use. Let's get after it. Hey there, I'm Brownie the Bear, your guide through Brown's Roofing Residential Training. When you see me pop up, pay attention. We're going to walk through every layer of a roof, one slide at a time. Let's get started. Here's the situation this module is built for. You're sitting at a homeowner's kitchen table. There's a stain on the ceiling below where the chimney passes through the roof. If you can say, that stain lines up with your chimney, I want to check the flashing and the cricket behind it, because that's the most common failure point on a roof like yours. You just became the expert in the room. If instead you say, yeah, roofs leak sometimes, you're one more salesperson. Homeowners can't see the difference between a good roof and a bad one, but they can absolutely hear the difference between someone who knows roofing and someone who doesn't. Terminology isn't trivia. It's trust, and trust is what closes. We're going to work through a residential roof, the way it gets built from the inside out. First, the structure. The frame and deck that hold everything up. Second, the shape and the slope. How we describe and measure a roof from the curb. Third, the layered system. Every material between the wood and the weather in installation order. Fourth, flashing. The metal that protects every edge, wall, and hole where most leaks actually start. Fifth, ventilation. The invisible system that decides how long the roof lives. And we'll finish with the mistakes rookies make and how a roof ages so you can tell where from damage on site. One module, one complete picture. Strip away everything, and a roof starts as a wooden skeleton. On older homes, that skeleton is usually rafters, individual boards cut and installed one at a time, running from the outside walls up to a ridge board at the peak. On most homes built since the 70s, it's trusses, pre-engineered triangular frames built in a factory and set in place by crane. You don't need to be a framer, but you need the words. The ridge is the horizontal line at the very top, where two roof planes meet. The spans running down from it carry the load to the walls. When an adjuster talks about a cracked truss or a sagging ridge line, you should be able to picture exactly what they mean, because a wavy ridge or a dip in a roof plane is a structure problem, not a shingle problem, and it changes the whole conversation. Nailed across the top of that frame is the decking, also called sheathing. This is the wood surface every other roofing material attaches to. Today, that's almost always OSB-oriented strand board or plywood in 4x8 sheets. On older homes, you'll also find plank decking, individual 1x boards, sometimes with gaps between them. Why you care? The deck is the foundation of the roof. Soft, delaminated, or rotten decking has to be replaced before anything goes over it, and a nail driven into bad wood holds nothing. When we quote a roof, decking condition is one of the honest unknowns. You'll learn to walk a roof and feel for soft spots underfoot, and to check it from the attic side when you can. Everything else in this module sits on this layer of wood. Now step back to the curb. Residential roofs come in a handful of basic shapes, and two of them cover most of what you'll see. A gable roof is the simple triangle, two planes meeting at a ridge, with the end walls of the house rising to a peak. Those triangular wall sections are the gables. A hip roof slopes back on all four sides, no peaked end walls, and the sloped corners where planes meet are called hips. Most real houses are combinations. A hip main body with a gable over the garage, a smaller roof over a porch. Two more words while we're here. A dormer is a small roofed structure that pops out of a roof plane. usually with a window. And anywhere two roof planes meet in an inside corner, they form a valley. Remember valleys, because water does. Every roof edge has a name, and mixing them up is the fastest way to sound green. The eave is the horizontal bottom edge, where the roof overhangs the wall and where gutters hang. The rake is the sloped edge, the angled line that follows a gable up to the peak. Underneath the overhang, the flat surface you see when you stand against the house and look straight up is the soffit. The vertical trim board that caps the ends of the overhang, the one the gutter is actually nailed to, is the fascia. 4 words: eave, rake, soffit, fascia. Say them until they're automatic, because homeowners will point at that board up there and your job is to give it its name. Slope is how we measure how steep a roof is, and roofing has its own notation: rise over run. A 412 roof rises 4 inches for every 12 inches it runs horizontally. Most homes sit somewhere between 412 and 812. Here's where the code draws its lines. Asphalt shingles are only allowed on slopes of 212 or steeper below that. Water just doesn't move fast enough, so porches and additions flatter than 212 get a different system entirely, like a rolled or membrane product. And between 212 and 412, shingles are allowed, but the deck has to be protected with a doubled up underlayment layer because water sheds that much slower. Above about 812, you're in steep territory, harder to walk, slower to work, more expensive to build. So pitch isn't small talk, it drives material choice, labor, safety setup, and price. Practice calling pitch from the driveway. Then check yourself with a pitch gauge or your phone. One more piece of vocabulary before we start stacking materials, because every conversation about price runs through it: the square. In roofing, a square is 100 square feet of roof surface. A typical single-story home might be 20 to 30 squares. Shingles are priced and delivered by the square. Labor is figured by the square. When you hear a roof called a 25 square hip with 2 layers, that one sentence tells an estimator most of what they need. 2 more numbers worth keeping. Shingles come 3 bundles to the square, and building code allows a maximum of 2 layers of shingles on a roof after that. It's a full tear off. You don't have to do takeoffs in your head. We have tools for that. But when the numbers get discussed, you need to know the units everyone's using. Here's the mental shift that separates roofing professionals from everyone else. The shingles are not the roof. The roof is a system of layers, each with one job, installed in one correct order, and the layers you can't see matter as much as the ones you can. From the deck up, drip edge at the edges, underlayment across the field, self-adhered membrane in the vulnerable spots, starter strip at the eaves and rakes, the field shingles themselves, and cap shingles over hips and ridges with flashing worked in at every wall, valley and penetration and ventilation, moving air underneath it all. The next few slides take those one at a time. When a homeowner asks why our quote isn't the cheapest one they got, the answer usually lives in these layers. The cheap bid skips what can't be seen from the street. First metal on the roof, drip edge. It's an L-shaped metal strip that wraps the perimeter along the eaves it goes on before the underlayment, along the rakes it goes on after. Its job is exactly what the name says: make water drip off the edge into the gutter instead of curling back under the shingles and rotting the fascia in the edge of the deck. It's cheap, it's code, and it's one of the first things a trained eye checks, because roofs done on the cheap skip it, and the rotted fascia board tells on them a few years later. When you see gutters pulling away or paint peeling on fascia, drip edge or the lack of it is on your suspect list. Across the whole deck goes underlayment, the backup water barrier between the wood and the shingles. The old standard was asphalt saturated felt paper, 15 or 30 pound. The modern standard, and what Browns installs, is synthetic underlayment. Lighter, far stronger, walkable, and it doesn't wrinkle or tear the way felt does. Understand the role. Shingles shed water. Underlayment is the safety net for the water that gets past them, wind-driven rain being the classic example. In a storm that lifts shingles, underlayment is the difference between we lost some shingles and we lost the ceiling in the living room. When you talk quality with a homeowner, this is a layer worth naming. There's a step up from regular underlayment, the self-adhered ice and water barrier, a rubberized asphalt membrane that peels and sticks directly to the deck and seals itself around every nail driven through it. That self-sealing is the whole point. A fastener hole through felt is a hole. A fastener through this membrane gets gasketed by the material itself. It earned its name in cold climates, where it's installed along the eaves, typically extending at least 2 feet inside the exterior wall line, to stop the water that backs up behind ice dams when snowmelt refreezes at the roof edge. But it's not just a snow product. On any roof, it's the right protection wherever water concentrates or lingers, lining valleys, wrapped around penetrations like chimneys and skylights, and on low-slope sections that shed slowly. Regular underlayment covers the field. The sealed membrane guards the spots that get hit hardest. Before the first course of shingles goes down, the eaves and rakes get starter strip, a purpose-made shingle product with a factory sealant line that runs right at the roof's edge. 2 jobs. First, it backs up the joints of the first visible course, so water can't find a seam straight through to the underlayment. Second, that sealant line bonds the leading edge of the first course down tight, and the edge is exactly where wind tries to get its first grip on a roof. It also gives the crew a clean, straight reference line at the eave and the rake, which shows up in how sharp the finished edges look. Brown's runs manufactured starter strip on every roof, eaves and rakes both. Nobody at the kitchen table will ask you about starter strip, but adjusters and inspectors notice it. And it's part of why a well-built roof holds its edges in a blow. Now the layer everyone pictures, the shingles. Asphalt shingles rule the residential market, and they come in 3 tiers. 3-tab shingles are the old economy option, a flat, single-layer shingle with cutouts that make each strip look like 3 small ones. Flat look, lighter weight, shortest life, lowest wind rating. These days, you mostly see them on rentals and on roofs you're replacing. Architectural shingles, also called dimensional or laminate, are today's standard. 2 layers bonded together, giving a thicker, textured, wood shake look, better warranties, and much better wind performance. That's the bulk of what Brown's installs. Above that, sit designer or luxury shingles, heavier, sculpted profiles that mimic slate or shake for high-end homes. Know all 3 on site. You'll price against the difference constantly. Asphalt isn't the only roof you'll stand on. Metal roofing is the big one, both exposed fastener panels on barns, camps, and workshops, and standing seam systems with concealed clips on homes that want 50-year performance and a clean look. Metal costs more up front and handles wind and rain beautifully. Clay and concrete tile show up on Mediterranean and Spanish-style homes, heavy and long-lived, and the structure has to be built for the weight. Natural slate and wood shake are less common, but know them when you see them. The point isn't to master 5 trades today. It's that when a homeowner says, "What would metal cost me?" you can hold that conversation and know when to pull in the right estimator instead of guessing. Look at the top lines of a finished roof, the ridge and the hips. Those get their own product. Cap shingles, thicker preformed pieces that fold over the line and shed water down both sides. On better roofs, they're a dedicated hip and ridge product with a taller profile that frames the whole roof. Caps take the most direct wind of any shingle on the roof. They sit right on the lines. The wind hits hardest. So, blown off caps after a storm are one of the most common finds on an inspection. Spot a roof where the ridgeline shows exposed nails or flat, patched-in strips, and you've found either a shortcut install or storm damage worth documenting. Now, The part of this module that will earn you the most money and save you the most callbacks: flashing. Flashing is metal formed to waterproof every place the shingle field gets interrupted: walls, chimneys, valleys, pipes, skylights. Write this down. Shingles almost never leak in the middle of an open field. Roofs leak at transitions, and flashing is what defends the transitions. Where a roof plane dies into a vertical wall, each course of shingles gets its own small bent piece woven in. That's step flashing. Where the bottom of a slope meets a wall head on, a continuous bent piece apron or head wall flashing bridges roof to wall. When you inspect transitions first. That habit alone puts you ahead of half the field. Chimneys collect every flashing concept in one place, which is why they leak more than anything else on a house. Around the base, you'll find the step and apron flashing we just covered, plus a second layer. Counter flashing metal cut into the mortar joints of the brick, folding down over the top edge of the base, flashing, so water running down the chimney face can't get behind it. And on the uphill side of a wide chimney, there should be a cricket, a small peak diverter that splits the water flowing down the slope and sends it around the chimney instead of letting it pond against the back. Remember our kitchen table stain from the start of this module? This slide is that stain. Chimney, flashing, cricket. You now know exactly where to look and what to call everything you find. Valleys carry more water than any other line on the roof. Every drop from two planes funnels into them. There are two main ways to build one. An open metal valley lines the channel with a wide metal pan, shingles trimmed back on both sides so the metal shows maximum durability, and on a quality install, it looks sharp. A close-cut valley runs shingles from one plane across the valley and trims the other plane's shingles to a clean line, no exposed metal, with a self-adhered membrane doing the waterproofing underneath. Both are legitimate. What's not legitimate is a valley with no protection under it. On inspections, look for shingles wearing thin in the valley line, debris damming the channel, or cracks along the cut line. Valley problems become interior leaks fast. Everything that pokes through a roof, plumbing, vents, attic fans, furnace flues, satellite mounts, is a hole somebody had to waterproof. Plumbing pipes, get a pipe boot, a flashing base with a rubber collar that grips the pipe. Here's your pro tip. Sun exposure cooks those rubber collars year after year. They crack and split at 10 to 15 years, often before the shingles are done, and a $15 boot failure does $1,000 ceiling damage. It is one of the most common leak sources on service calls anywhere, and learn this phrase for life. Caulk is not flashing. A blob of sealant smeared where metal should be is a temporary patch, and a red flag that tells you how the rest of the roof was treated. Flashing is formed metal, and proper layering, everything else is borrowed time. Under everything we've stacked sits an attic, and that attic has to breathe. Ventilation is a balanced loop. Cool outside air enters low. Through vents in the soffit, that's intake and hot. Moist air exits at the top of the roof, that's exhaust. On a summer afternoon, an unvented attic can push 140 degrees or more. And that heat cooks shingles from underneath, drives up the cooling bill, and traps the moisture that grows mold and rots decking from the inside. In winter, trapped moist air condenses on the cold underside of the deck and does the same damage in slow motion. Building codes actually size this. Attics need a set amount of vent area for their square footage, split between intake and exhaust, so air actually flows. And shingle manufacturers care enough that poor ventilation can limit the warranty. A roof without ventilation is a new roof aging on fast forward. You can read a roof's exhaust system from the driveway. A ridge vent is a low continuous vent running the length of the ridge under capped shingles, today's standard, nearly invisible, and what Brown's installs on most homes. Box vents, those square cans near the ridge, are the older static option. Count them, because a big attic needs several. Turbines are the spinning mushrooms. Power vents have a motor. Gable vents are louvers in the end walls of older houses. 2 field rules. 1. Exhaust only works if intake feeds it a beautiful ridge vent over block soffits, moves nothing. 2, don't mix exhaust types on the same attic. Add a ridge vent above working box vents, and the airflow short circuits between them instead of pulling from the soffits. When we replace a roof, we correct the ventilation plan that's part of the value you're selling. Let's talk about the 3 ways new reps hurt themselves, because they're all avoidable. Mistake 1 is fumbling identification, calling a hip roof a gable, calling the fascia that trim board, calling every piece of metal on the roof flashing with no idea which kind. Homeowners may not catch it, but adjusters, inspectors, and builders will, and the moment they do, everything else you say gets discounted. The fix costs nothing. Drive a neighborhood and call the roofs. Shape, pitch, edges, exhaust type, visible flashing points. 10 driveways a day for 2 weeks, and this vocabulary is yours for life. The reps who sound like experts practiced sounding like experts. Mistake 2 is quoting a roof as if shingles are the whole story, matching a competitor's cheap bid line for line and wondering where the margin and the callbacks come from. You now know what the cheap bid leaves out. Real starter strip, sealed valleys, new flashing instead of reused rusty metal, corrected ventilation, drip edge on every even rake. When a homeowner puts a low bid on the table, don't trash the other company. Walk the layers. Here's what's in our roof that may not be in that number, and here's what each piece protects. You're not selling shingles against shingles anymore. You're selling a system against a layer. That reframe wins more kitchen tables than any discount ever will. Mistake 3 is skipping the invisible systems, glancing at shingle condition, and calling it an inspection. You now know better. The deck can be soft under solid-looking shingles. The attic can be cooking a 5-year-old roof to death. A pipe boot can be split wide open behind a perfect field of architectural laminate. Every real inspection covers structure, lines, surface, transitions, and airflow. That's also what separates a Brown's inspection from a guy with a ladder. We document what we find photos of every issue, named correctly so, the homeowner, and when it applies. The insurance companies see exactly what we see. Thorough and documented beats, fast and vague, every single time. One more skill that makes you dangerous in a driveway: knowing what normal aging looks like so you can tell wear from damage. Asphalt shingles age on a curve. Granule loss comes first. The colored mineral surface washes into the gutters, and bald spots expose the black asphalt underneath to the sun that destroys it. Then the shingles dry out. Edges curl or cup, the mats crack, and around year 15 to 25, depending on product, ventilation, and climate, the roof is simply done. That's wear, and it's gradual and even across the whole roof. Damage is different. It's localized, and it has a story, a line of missing shingles down a wind path, creased tabs that got lifted and folded, or the distinct random bruising a hailstorm leaves behind. Homeowners constantly mistake one for the other in both directions. The rep who can point and say this slope is worn, but that's storm damage, is the rep whose word gets trusted when it counts. Let's prove you've got it. Picture pulling up to a 1-story brick home. From the driveway, hip roof, about a 512, architectural shingles, ridge vent on the main line, 1 chimney on the back slope. At the edges, gutters on the eaves hung on fascia, soffit vents underneath, drip edge visible at the rake. On the roof, 2 valleys feeding the front porch line, 4 pipe boots check every collar satellite mount on the west slope, step flashing where the roof meets the 2nd-story wall, cricket behind the chimney. In the attic, if we can get there, daylight at the soffits, no daylight anywhere else. Decking dry. 30 seconds ago, that was just a house. Now, it's a checklist you can see. That's the skill this module was built to give you, and it gets sharper every roof you call. That's residential roofing 101. You know, the frame and the deck, the shapes and the pitch, every layer from drip edge to ridge cap, the flashing that guards the transitions, the ventilation that decides how the roof ages, what wear looks like next to damage, and the 3 mistakes to never make. Mark this module complete, grab the handout, and keep it in the truck. The glossary is on the last page. Then go call 10 roofs from 10 driveways. Welcome to the residential team. Let's go build something that holds. That's Residential Roofing 101. You can read a roof now. The parts, the layers, and the language. I'm Brownie the Bear. See you in the next module.